Heir left you with a 50-50 shot the ball would ricochet off a rock and leave you to take one in the kisser. George loved to run. He hoped to turn out for track someday, and perhaps that was the draw of soccer, a wide-open space in which to run. He considered himself fast, but knew he was not exactly a record breaker, not a speed merchant. His attitude was that he only had to be faster than his older brother Phil when they got in the occasional scrap. The three boys traveled a couple of blocks from the school, and Bruce peeled off. They had reached his home, the Buckingham Apartments, an unremarkable complex sitting just off the street. George didn't care that his friend was from a different economic class. The boys just liked each other's company. "See you, fellas," said Bruce, passing under the big maple tree outside the apartments. "Bye," said George and Joe in unison, waving to their friend. They continued on along Yakima Avenue to 8th Street. In that stretch, they succeeded in finding several more rocks that met their exacting standards and proceeded to match each other kick for kick. "Nice one," observed George after Joe sent one last stone skittering down the street, barely missing a green sedan parked along the curb. "Gotta go, George. See you after lunch," said Joe, walking away backward up the hill as George kept his course heading down. Joe fully expected to see George after lunch. Why wouldn't he? George had made the walk more times than he could count. He had a couple of different routes home depending on how the spirit moved him. Sometimes he'd get a ride home from the family chauffeur, Oswald A. Olson. To George, he was just plain Oswald, one of the gang, the family gardener who frequently drove them places. After leaving Joe, he headed west 2 blocks to the Annie Wright Seminary, where his older sister Anne went to school. They frequently met up to travel the last few blocks home together, and on this day the plan was to meet her outside her school and catch a ride home with Oswald. When he arrived, George looked around, eyes peeled for his sister. There were a few people milling about. A couple of women greeted him, a parent and a kindergarten teacher that he recognized from one of his many stops at his sister's school. George returned every greeting with a smile. That was something he never lacked. It was one of his defining characteristics. His school had released the students earlier than normal for lunch that day, so he didn't expect to find his sister just yet. He weighed his options. Pull up a seat on the curb and wait 15 minutes for Anne and Oswald to show up, or hoof it for home on his own. "No way I'm waiting," thought George. He wasn't a fan of sitting still. The term "ants in your pants" was coined specifically for kids like George. Besides, it was a beautiful day. If he left now, he would most likely beat them home anyway. It was only 5 blocks from the seminary to George's home. Half a mile, most of it a straight shot. He gave one last look around for his sister, came up empty, and decided to take off. "I'll make her a sandwich when I get home," thought George. "Peanut butter. It'll be waiting for her when she gets there, with a glass of milk. She'll like that." George enjoyed doling out small kindnesses, especially for Anne. He got along well enough with his other siblings, his younger sister Elizabeth, or Wiz, as they called her, and older brother Phil, called Flip. But Anne held a special place for him. She was the oldest of the kids, 4 years George's senior, and she was the one they all looked up to. George had always felt especially close to her. He made his way through a hedge-lined path running next to the Tacoma Lawn and Tennis Club and came out on Burrow Road, less than 3 blocks from his house. Along the way, he kept his eyes peeled for more rocks to boot. He figured he needed to work on his kicking technique if he was going to outdo Joe. That was when he saw a man get out of the passenger seat of a green Buick sedan parked nearby with its engine idling. The man began walking toward him. It never occurred to George to run. Part 1. The Snatch. Chapter 1. The Note. Friday, May 24, 1935. At approximately 6:30 that evening, 26-year-old Martin Hammerstrom drove his post office messenger motorcycle to 420 North 4th Street in Tacoma. There was still plenty of daylight left, but he didn't spare the throttle. He was determined to convey his special delivery letter with all possible speed. Hammerstrom knew that to fail at his responsibility could cost him his job, and he was lucky to have one in a country still struggling out of the Great Depression. Desperation was everywhere. Anyone fortunate enough to have gainful work held on to their job with a tight grip. The message itself was common-looking.